All they wanted to do was flex on social media and get caught by the police. And the same goes for this girl. She couldn't wait to flex about her shoplifting. This lady wrote a manual on how to get rid of husbands. And then she went after her own husband. And this reality TV star decided to make threats at an officer. Let's find out more of the most questionable and worst decisions that we covered in 2024 in this marathon video. When you're a mayor and you want to have a good time, you would take an Uber instead of driving drunk at twice the limit, right? Or if you saw your car getting towed, you wouldn't wreck it on purpose, right? And if your mom is a famous DA known for charging former President Trump, you'd be on your best behavior, right? And if you were a current lady for hire, you may not be the best choice to guide any decisions for kids. Let's get right to it with the crazy decisions people do, starting with number 6. Twice the limit. Teresa Heitman, the mayor of Naples, Florida, was arrested after an incident involving suspected drunk driving. But she said she was acting as if it were no big deal, claiming that she was just a private citizen at the time, because that makes total sense. For whatever drunk reason, Heitman followed some random couple home after she was out at a restaurant or something, and then parked her car on their lawn. The couple, reasonably freaked out by her behavior, immediately called the police. When officers arrived, Heitman was identified and asked to perform a sobriety test, which confirmed that she was indeed drunk like a skunk. Despite her role as mayor, Heitman apparently tried to distance herself from the title during the interaction, insisting she was acting as a private citizen, as if she's only the mayor when she's on the clock. Her blood alcohol content was found to be twice the legal limit, leading to her arrest. During a subsequent city council meeting, Heitman made a public apology, expressing regret for her actions and the effect it had on her family and community. She reaffirmed her commitment to serving with integrity despite the backlash. While Heitman continues to serve, her actions have left many wondering how a politician could make such a reckless decision, especially one who had been in politics since 2008 and mayor for the last 3 years. It goes without saying that driving drunk is an incredibly stupid thing for anyone to do. But when you're a public figure responsible for your city, it's monumentally stupid, since you've got so much to lose. As of the release of this video, Heitman has pleaded not guilty, waived her arraignment, and continues to serve as mayor while facing her charges. What do you think, though? Should she be allowed to continue being the mayor? On one hand, everyone makes mistakes, and thankfully no one was hurt, so it's not too hard to look past her embarrassing mistake. On the other hand, someone could have very easily been hurt or lost their life. And really, these days, there's no excuse for drunk driving. Should someone who's clearly making bad decisions be allowed to run a city? Tell us what you think in the comments below. Number 5. Self-inflicted dents. Russell Leosa, a 55-year-old man from Brooklyn, got hit with multiple charges after a chaotic incident involving a tow truck and his pickup. The situation went down when a tow truck operator was preparing to haul away Leosa's black Chevy Silverado. Rather than comply, Leosa confronted the driver, claiming he was being robbed. During the heated exchange, Leosa shouted some choice words at the tow truck driver before jumping into the tow truck himself. What followed was a brief but destructive drive through the streets, during which Leosa collided with several parked cars. Eventually, due to Leosa's lousy and crazy driving, his own truck tipped over, causing further damage. Leosa's actions led to charges including robbery, grand larceny auto, reckless endangerment, and multiple counts of property damage. His father, however, defended him, insisting that Leosa thought the tow truck operator was attempting to steal his vehicle. According to his father, the tow truck was unmarked and the driver allegedly made threatening remarks, which caused Leosa to react the way he did. Despite his father's defense, Leosa was still arrested and pleaded not guilty in court, where his bail was set at $10,000. The incident raises a point that many of us don't really think about these days. If we all had GPS devices in our cars or a service such as LoJack, we wouldn't need to take such intense actions when we think they're being stolen. While Leosa's story might not exactly seem believable to everyone, simply having a GPS installed and waiting for the police to come clear the situation up would probably have been a better plan. Number 4. Masked games. A couple idiots named Philip Clodfelter and Kelly Garner earned themselves some charges after breaking into a comic store and stealing thousands of dollars worth of collectible cards while dressed up in cheap Halloween costumes. Their costumes didn't just add to the eerie vibe, though. They became crucial evidence against the two. The break-in occurred at Grand Adventures Comics and Games, where they made off with approximately $8,000 worth of Magic: The Gathering cards. But this wasn't their only attempt that night. After their initial success at Grand Adventures, they apparently tried to break into another store, Grand Slam Collectibles, but couldn't get in. Surveillance footage from the second location showed the two men wearing masks, one resembling Michael Myers, and the other one dressed up like that scary nun from The Nun, easily the scariest nun since Whoopi Goldberg. The video also captured their getaway car, a red Honda, which turned out to be far less menacing. The police, once they heard that the nun and Michael Myers were out robbing places, issued an all-points bulletin for the Honda being driven around by the two terrifying characters. Smyrna police later spotted the car driving erratically and made the stop. Inside, they found the masks and stolen cards in plain view, since Garner and Clodfelter didn't exactly take time to cover their tracks. During interviews with detectives, both men were charged with burglary, theft, and vandalism. As it turned out, this likely wasn't just an isolated incident. Detectives suspect the two men were involved in similar burglaries at comic stores in nearby areas. As of their arrest, they were being held at the Rutherford County Adult Detention Center, each with a $48,000 bond. It's clear they had a plan, but between the masks, the easily identifiable car, and the stolen goods in plain sight, their plan didn't last long. Sounds like these guys should have stolen some Swiftfoot boots as well. Am I right, fellow Magic players? Number 3. Pizza Switcheroo. Jose Marti Alvarez, a 55-year-old man, was arrested for operating a long-running scam in Miami Springs, Florida. For years, he had been impersonating the well-known Roman's Pizzeria by distributing fake flyers to hotels, tricking tourists into ordering his own undercooked and overpriced pizzas from the impersonated business Roman Cuisine Pizzeria. By doing so, Marti Alvarez tarnished the reputation of the real pizzeria, whose owner, Jesus Roman, had been receiving complaints from customers for food they never served. Roman first became aware of the situation when frustrated customers started calling his restaurant, demanding answers about orders they never received or complaining about poor quality food. Many of these tourists thought they were ordering from his highly rated establishment, but were instead getting subpar meals from Marti Alvarez's operation. Roman's business, praised by pizza critic Dave Portnoy, had spent years building a great reputation for quality, and this scam was causing confusion and dissatisfaction amongst customers. We didn't know that being a pizza critic was a job, by the way. That knowledge could have changed our entire career trajectory. After years of enduring complaints and negative reviews, Roman decided enough was enough. It's weird that he waited years for this, but whatever. Roman eventually filed a police report, hoping to stop the scam. Over time, law enforcement began investigating and eventually tracked down Jose Marti Alvarez, who had been distributing fraudulent flyers. Police arrested Marti Alvarez, charging him with an organized scheme to defraud. Additionally, during one of his deliveries, he allegedly struck a hotel employee with his car because, of course he did, leading to an additional charge. Roman was glad that the arrest might finally put an end to Marti Alvarez's tarnishing his shop's reputation. But he was also baffled by the whole thing, saying that Marti Alvarez could have easily avoided all of this by simply doing things the right way. After all, if he was going to scam people with a fake pizza business, the least he could have done was cook the pizza properly. It's not like he was doing rocket surgery or brain science or something. He probably could have gotten away with the scam almost indefinitely but instead wanted to be greedy and lazy, getting himself caught. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have to go look into a possible career change as a fried chicken critic. Number 2, unknown suspension. Kenea Willis, the 25-year-old daughter of Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis, was arrested in Georgia for driving with a suspended license. Fannie Willis, who has gained national attention for leading the election interference case against former President Donald Trump, now faces public scrutiny over her daughter's arrest. Kenea was pulled over after police spotted her using her phone while driving, something none of us totally ever do, of course. She explained to the officers that she was on the phone with her mother about her pregnancy, unaware that her license had been suspended earlier for a similar violation. Kenea was handcuffed and taken into custody, where she was booked on a misdemeanor charge of driving with a suspended license. According to the arrest report, her mother, Fannie Willis, arrived on the scene to take possession of the vehicle. Kenea's mugshot shows her looking visibly drained after the arrest, which occurred about 30 minutes south of Atlanta. She was released shortly after and is expected to appear in court. The potential penalties for driving with a suspended license in Georgia include a minimum of 2 days in jail, a fine of at least $500, and an extension of the suspension if convicted for a second offense. The penalties could be harsher, including up to 10 days in jail and fines ranging from $1,000 to $2,500. This arrest adds to the challenges already faced by Fannie Willis, who has been at the center of a high-profile election interference case involving former President Donald Trump. As the lead prosecutor in the case, Fannie has been in the national spotlight, which has brought both praise and controversy. Her personal life has also faced scrutiny, including accusations of an improper relationship with a special prosecutor involved in the Trump case. Despite the ongoing legal challenges surrounding her mother, Kenea remains focused on her future. She graduated from Texas Southern University and is planning to attend law school, where this latest incident brings further public attention to a family already under the media microscope. Kenea's court date will determine the next steps in this situation, but the impact on both her and her family's reputation remains to be unseen. You'd think she would have been a little more careful with some of her decisions, considering all the scrutiny her mom is going through. Number 1. Unfit to lead? Ashley Ketcherside, a mother from Godley, Texas, was removed from multiple school district roles after the discovery of her criminal past. She had served on Godley Independent School District's School Health Advisory Council, which oversees health education for students, including topics such as human reproduction. However, Ketcherside's background raised concerns once it was revealed that she had previous convictions for commercial adult services and was still advertising herself as such. Parents within the district became suspicious when Ketcherside claimed to own several businesses, but failed to ever provide any details about them. This led some parents to investigate further, eventually uncovering her online adult service profiles under the alias Lola Bria. These profiles revealed her active participation in the adult services industry despite her role in advising the district on sensitive educational matters. The school district quickly took action once the revelations came to light. Ketcherside was removed from the School Health Advisory Council and other district committees she had volunteered for, including the Family and Community Engagement Committee and the Godley Athletic Booster Club. The district also clarified that although she appeared in meeting footage and was listed on official documents, she was never officially approved for these positions. Ketcherside's involvement in the district, despite her past convictions, raised questions about the thoroughness of the background checks conducted by the school. Some parents, concerned about the type of client she may have been involved with, expressed their discomfort with her influence in the district. While these types of paid companion services are legal in Texas, exchanging more intimate services for money is still a violation of the law. Ketcherside's prior offenses and her continued activity as a paid companion prompted the school district to make immediate changes, and she has since been fully removed. If she wanted to work at the school, why didn't she quit her other job? She had to know that if anyone found out, that'd be it for her, since that line of work isn't exactly celebrated in society. In any case, aside from some probable occasional school activities, she wasn't around the kids or in a classroom. Which leads us to the question, in this day and age, with it becoming more and more common that people leave their high-paying jobs for things such as OnlyFans, is it really a problem that Catch Side was on some school advisory board? Legal issues aside, should everyone who chooses that line of work automatically be disregarded because of that work? We aren't free of the consequences of those choices. She decided to tell all her followers about the amazing things she shoplifted. These ladies didn't think money laundering was a crime that would ever catch up to them. Who are the natural-born criminals that just can't help themselves? Let's get right to it, starting with this dumb influencer at number 6, advertising stupidity. Marlena Velez, a 22-year-old influencer from Cape Coral, Florida, wound up in the hot seat after trying to outsmart a Target checkout system. With a following of nearly 300,000 on TikTok, she's known for sharing glimpses of her life and flaunting a luxurious image. But her latest post didn't go as planned, and it wasn't just her audience who noticed. Velez's trip to Target was anything but routine. She loaded her cart with over $500 worth of household goods and trendy clothing, then headed to the self-checkout. Instead of paying full price, she scanned fake barcodes to list cheaper prices, leaving the store with 16 items she hadn't properly paid for. And somehow, this genius missed all the security cameras that are all over the place in Target, capturing everything. But lack of brain power only gets worse. Velez also documented parts of her shopping spree on TikTok. Wearing the same tan outfit seen in the surveillance footage, she recorded herself picking out items and loading them into her car. That video, shared with her massive audience, ended up being the clue that led police straight to her. Target's loss prevention team worked with Cape Coral police, who later received an anonymous tip linking Velez to her Instagram and TikTok accounts. This isn't the first time Velez got herself in trouble with the law. At 17, she was arrested for taking a friend's car without permission and crashing it. She also faced charges for pulling the same scam at Walmart, underringing items and stealing $63 worth of goods. Despite completing probation for that incident, she continued pulling the same scheme. Velez was arrested and charged with petty theft for the Target incident. After briefly deactivating her TikTok account, she reactivated it but disabled comments, probably in response to the backlash she was deservedly getting. While her followers are apparently fascinated by her seemingly glamorous life, her most recent arrest shows that the image she portrays online is probably not what it appears to be. Like everything else on the internet, it's all fake and idealized. Number 5. The Reverse Facelift. John Coletti, a not elderly man from Michigan, ran an elaborate identity theft scheme that targeted casino patrons in Michigan and Kansas, ultimately stealing over $100,000. His methods were as unusual as they were theatrical, including the use of prosthetic masks to impersonate elderly men and counterfeit IDs to access his victims' bank accounts. But his run came to an abrupt halt, and the details of his operation are almost too wild to believe. Coletti's plan centered on self-service kiosks used in casinos. These machines allow users to withdraw funds by verifying their identity with a driver's license, social security number, and phone number. By targeting individuals enrolled in a VIP program linking their bank accounts to these kiosks, Coletti exploited their profiles to drain their accounts. To conceal his identity, he donned realistic prosthetic masks and used forged documents, including dozens of fake driver's licenses and casino player cards. Colletti's spree spanned months, with his most notable thefts occurring at the MGM Grand in Detroit. Surveillance footage captured an elderly-looking man withdrawing tens of thousands of dollars, raising suspicions among casino staff. When confronted at a Kansas casino, Colletti fled to a restroom, discarded his disguise, and attempted to escape. Authorities later found masks, cash, fake IDs, and detailed spreadsheets with victims' personal information in his possession. The FBI uncovered even more surprising evidence, including guides on committing financial crimes and counterfeit money production. Colletti was ultimately sentenced to 4 years in federal prison for his elaborate scheme, as well as being ordered to pay restitution of $125,740 to Global Payments Gaming Services, Inc. It's crazy that he was able to run that scam for as long as he did, right? That mask is pretty good, but we really don't see how it would fool anyone. He looked more like Leatherface than he did some old man. Number 4. Gravity wins. Troy Cunningham from Memphis, Tennessee, lost his life after a confrontation escalated into a tragedy. The incident, involving multiple people, appears to have been triggered by a dispute over a missing firearm. So how did such a seemingly small disagreement, albeit a serious one since it involved a firearm, lead to such severe consequences and end with one suspect literally falling through a ceiling? According to reports, the altercation began when Troy Cunningham was confronted by 3 individuals, including Jarius Hibbler, Tamarius Barron, and Diario Wilkerson. Surveillance footage revealed the group approaching Cunningham while he was with family and friends. Witnesses say the 3 demanded Cunningham's firearm, accusing him of having stolen Hibbler's firearm. When he refused, the argument escalated. So Hibbler allegedly pointed a firearm at Cunningham, prompting him to raise his hands in the air. A fight broke out after Wilkerson lunged at him. Cunningham managed to break free and run, but Hibbler and Barron reportedly got him as he fled. Surveillance footage then captured Wilkerson taking an item believed to be the missing firearm before leaving the scene. The incident didn't end there. During the shooting, a passing vehicle was also hit, injuring a woman inside. She was treated and is expected to recover. Authorities eventually arrested Hibbler and Barron. Wilkerson was arrested weeks later after being found hiding in an attic. Weeks later, when authorities tracked Wilkerson to a nearby home, he hid in the attic. His clever hiding spot backfired when the ceiling gave way and he fell into the kitchen below, right in front of the officers searching for him. As of the release of this video, all 3 are in jail awaiting trial. Number 3. Florida Theft Ring. Rafael Garcia, 21, and his 16-year-old brother, Christian Garcia, were at the center of a high-tech car theft ring in Florida that stole $2.5 million worth of luxury vehicles. Now, their operation has come to an abrupt end, with authorities uncovering the surprisingly sophisticated methods behind their spree. The brothers, along with their crew, targeted models such as Dodge Chargers, Chevrolet Corvettes, and Jeep Trailhawks. Their method was shockingly efficient. The group was stealing vehicles directly from dealership lots. The crew would break into cars, often through windows or sunroofs, and use a key fob programmer to create new keys on the spot. This allowed them to bypass standard security systems and just drive the cars away. Once stolen, the vehicles were either sold or stripped for parts, with profits fueling the group's lifestyles. Dubbed Operation Family Affair, the investigation revealed a spree involving 30 cars stolen from 20 dealerships across 11 counties. While the group used advanced key fob programming to bypass security, their operation was riddled with flaws. Their habit of targeting multiple dealerships in quick succession drew attention, and the volume of thefts left a clear trail for investigators to follow. Additionally, storing the cars in local units instead of quickly moving them created easy leads for law enforcement. Despite their high-tech tools, the crew's lack of caution and overconfidence made their operation unsustainable. Law enforcement eventually arrested the Garcia brothers and 3 accomplices, Bisma Fayez Cial, 22, Adriel Fabian Mendez Arroyo, 17, and Enzo Prado Oliveira, 18. They now face charges ranging from grand theft to federal racketeering. However, one suspect remains at large, but we're sure it's only a matter of time. What stands out in this case is the sheer overconfidence of the operation. Despite their high-tech methods and substantial profits, the group was sloppy, and that was what ultimately got them caught. They left behind a clear trail by hitting so many dealerships in such a short time, which was only going to draw attention. It's a typical example of how greed and carelessness gets you caught. Their tools may have been advanced, but their planning was not. Number 2, the Lavish Priest. Father Powell Bilecki, a Capuchin friar based in New York, is facing federal charges for defrauding donors of over $650,000. Bilecki's promises to support Lebanese medical clinics masked an extravagant lifestyle, the very antithesis of his order, outraging those who trusted him. So, how did this friar's elaborate lifestyle come crashing down? Bilecki is a Catholic priest who is supposed to live in the Franciscan tradition, focused on living simply, serving the poor, and following the teachings of St. Francis of Assisi. But apparently, Bilecki didn't fully subscribe to these principles, as he solicited funds through radio appearances, church events, and crowdfunding campaigns, claiming he was a doctor running clinics while living in Lebanon. He told heart-wrenching stories of assisting communities devastated by conflict and a massive Beirut explosion. However, prosecutors revealed he was actually living in New York the entire time, spending donations on luxury goods and personal indulgences. Bilecki's fraudulent activities began in 2015 and continued for nearly a decade. Instead of funding clinics, Bilecki funneled over $600,000 to credit card payments for high-end purchases, including $15,000 for plastic surgery, luxury gym memberships, and upscale restaurant meals. He also enjoyed trips to the Hamptons and shopped at elite men's clothing stores. Bilecki used aliases like Dr. Fakan Sonderberg Luxemburg, and even legally adopted a royal-sounding name to enhance his fabricated persona. To reinforce his story, Bilecki even produced fake credentials, claiming to be a surgeon with multiple PhDs. He appeared on local radio programs and sent emails to donors detailing his supposed work in Lebanon. In one instance, he actually convinced a couple to transfer $84,000 by claiming he was purchasing ambulances and medical supplies. But instead, he scheduled plastic surgery and then went on a shopping spree. Bilecki's deception was finally uncovered in 2023 when the province of St. Mary launched an internal investigation, prompted by discrepancies in his employment claims. They discovered his extensive fraud and reported him to federal authorities. Despite his vows of poverty, Bilecki used the province's reputation to gain credibility while misusing its resources. As of the release of this video, Bilecki has since pled guilty to wire fraud and now faces up to 20 years in prison. The Capuchin Order has disavowed his actions and is cooperating fully with authorities while exploring appropriate canonical measures regarding his future in the church. It's a bit surprising, but refreshing, that the church took action and reported him. While there's no denying the history of corruption and cover-ups, this does feel like a step toward accountability, small as it may be. Number 1. Cash smuggling. We have an update on Michelle Clark, the 42-year-old mother of 2 from the UK, who wasn't just juggling the demands of parenthood. She was also allegedly orchestrating a £104 million cash smuggling empire. Behind the scenes of her mostly ordinary life as a digital coordinator for Sky TV, Clark is said to have built a network that funneled millions overseas. So, how did this suburban mom become the alleged mastermind of an international operation? According to reports, Clark masterminded a network of couriers to move enormous sums of money from the UK to Dubai. Using luxury tactics like business-class flights to minimize detection, the group allegedly transported cash stuffed into suitcases on at least 83 flights over 18 months. Couriers were reportedly recruited through a WhatsApp group called Sunshine and Lollipops, which Clark allegedly managed. One of the most notable couriers was Jo Emma Larvin, a former model and ex-girlfriend of Welsh boxing champion Joe Calzaghe. Larvin, along with her partner Jonathan Johnson, was convicted for carrying millions of pounds in suitcases disguised with everyday vacation items. Other couriers included Beatrice Auti and Tara Hanlon, who have already faced sentencing for their roles in the scheme. Investigators believe the operation was highly organized. Couriers were instructed to use pay-as-you-go phones, delete messages, and follow strict protocols to avoid raising suspicion. Upon arriving in Dubai, they declared the cash as legitimate transfers using cover letters from a company called Omnivest. While some couriers claimed they believed the cash was for official purposes, like the UAE embassy, their luxurious lifestyles told a different story. Social media posts showcased glamorous vacations to destinations like the Maldives and stays at high-end hotels. As of the release of this video, the alleged ringleader, Emirati national Abdullah Al-Falasi, has been sentenced to over 9 years in prison for his role in the operation. He was found to have organized 83 trips over 18 months, moving cash totaling approximately $130 million. But despite these convictions, Clark hasn't yet been charged. She remains under investigation in Dubai, where she has been prohibited from leaving the country. The UK's National Crime Agency continues to work with UAE authorities to gather evidence and determine her level of involvement in the smuggling ring. It's kind of crazy to think that Clark's everyday role as a mom was so wildly different from her role as one of the heads of a global cash smuggling network. Keep your eye on Netflix. We're sure it'll be coming soon enough. This lady wrote a novel on how to take out her husband. And then she did it. And these Instagram influencers unfortunately decided to not wear their life jackets once they hit choppy waters because they didn't want to ruin their tan. What are some of the other wild and strange decisions people will make with disastrous consequences? Let's find out, starting with number 7. Husbandless Manual. Nancy Crampton Brophy, a romance novelist who once wrote an essay about how to off your husband, ended up following her own advice, or so prosecutors argued. Convicted of offing her husband, Dan Brophy, back in 2018, Nancy was sentenced to life in prison after a trial that uncovered a bizarre mix of financial schemes, suspicious purchases, and her own unbelievable writings. Who would have thought that someone who wrote a story about bumping off her husband would actually do it? Apparently, pretty much everyone. Nancy had built a modest career writing romantic suspense novels with titles such as The Wrong Husband and The Wrong Cop. Her books often explored themes of betrayal and calculated decisions, mirroring the events that prosecutors argued took place in real life. Even more shocking was her 2011 essay, How to M-Word Your Husband. YouTube won't let us say the actual M word, but it rhymes with hurdler, where she outlined potential motives and methods for pulling off such a crime. While the essay wasn't directly used as evidence in court, the fact that she actually wrote something like that was clearly on everyone's minds during the trial. Dan Brophy's body was discovered on the kitchen floor at the Oregon Culinary Institute in 2018, where he worked as an instructor. He had been fired upon at close range, getting hit once in the back and once in the chest while performing his morning tasks. Nothing appeared out of place as far as it being some sort of robbery. Dan's wallet, cash, and credit cards were untouched, which meant that whatever the motive was, it was probably personal. The ensuing investigation revealed that Dan's wife Nancy had purchased a ghost firearm kit and additional firearm parts in the months leading up to her husband's passing. Although she insisted these purchases were research for her writing, prosecutors argued that she used the extra slide and barrel to commit the crime, then swapped them out to prevent the firearm from being linked to the bullets found at the scene. The new parts were never recovered, adding to the suspicion that they had been deliberately disposed of. Financial struggles also played a significant role in the case. The couple had been under economic strain, having to withdraw from retirement accounts just to stay afloat. Yet Nancy maintained expensive life insurance policies that prosecutors said she aimed to cash in on after Dan's passing, totaling over $1.4 million. Surveillance footage also placed her van near the crime scene on the morning of the incident. despite her claim of being elsewhere. Prosecutors also pointed to eerie parallels between the crime and Nancy's 2011 essay. While it wasn't directly used as evidence, she outlined motives such as financial gain and methods such as firearms, noting that they were messy and required skill. She emphasized the need to avoid detection, echoing the prosecution's argument that she used a ghost firearm kit and purchased the additional Glock parts to obscure ballistic evidence. Her methodical planning seemed to mirror her fiction, with the real-life crime playing out in an unsettlingly similar fashion. Nancy's defense argued that all the evidence was just circumstantial. Basically, that it just happened that she wrote out her essay about taking out Dan, and that it was just coincidence that she was researching the exact method she used to execute her plan, and that she and Dan totally had a loving marriage. She testified about their bond and shared plans, insisting she had no motive to harm him. But the jury, just like pretty much everyone else who heard this story, was unconvinced, deliberating for just 8 hours before delivering a guilty verdict. As of the release of this video, Nancy is serving her sentence, leaving many to reflect on how art, life, and intent intertwined in this chilling case. It's so weird to think that a writer who explored the nuances of marital betrayal and fictional crimes ended up following a path so close to her own stories. Just writing that essay, let alone actually publishing it, almost guaranteed that if anything ever happened to her husband, she'd be the first suspect, regardless of the actual evidence. You'd expect better from a crime author. Number 6. Low-speed getaway. Florida man Dusty Mobley was wanted for stealing a $40,000 boat and evading deputies by diving into a swamp. Months later, when law enforcement finally tracked him down, his escape plan took an unexpected turn. This time, he tried to get away on a riding lawnmower, Rex Fury style. Mobley first caught authorities' attention in early 2022 when he allegedly stole a $40,000 boat. Investigators say he used heavy machinery to break into a metal building and make off with the vessel. When deputies approached him days later, he was on the stolen boat, living his Florida man life. But instead of surrendering, Mobley dove into a nearby swamp that was likely filled with gators because, it's Florida, and there's more gators than there are people, and managed to evade arrest. Because, seriously, the cops weren't crazy enough to jump into a swamp probably filled with gators. Months later, deputies tracked him down at his property. Spotting them, Mobley hopped on a John Deere riding lawnmower and sped off. Well, we're using sped off as a relative term here. He sped off as much as someone can speed off when driving a ride on a lawnmower, which is about 7 miles an hour. The chase lasted only 17 seconds before deputies used a taser to stop him. At the time of his arrest, Mobley was found with a firearm, a handcuff key, and some substance paraphernalia. Mobley's criminal history stretches back years, including convictions for arson and fleeing police. This time, he's facing over a dozen charges with no bond set. While fleeing authorities is a stupid move, doing it on a lawnmower is extra stupid. We're not sure exactly what his plans were here. Maybe he was hoping to distract the police with a gloriously manicured lawn? We don't claim to understand the deranged mind of a Florida man. We just sit back, watch, and appreciate the spectacle. Number 5. Professorizing. Dr. Ellen Glickman, a longtime professor and former director at Kent State University, found herself in a situation she probably didn't expect when she called 911 for help getting into her office. What started as a request to access the restroom quickly spiraled into a much more complicated incident. It all began after a university commencement ceremony where Glickman had been celebrating with colleagues. She called the police, claiming she was locked out of Nixon Hall, a building on Kent State University's campus where Dr. Ellen Glickman worked, but officers arriving on the scene noted the smell of alcohol on her breath. Glickman admitted to having a drink earlier in the night, but the situation escalated when she refused multiple requests to call for a ride home. Instead, she argued that she was okay to drive, since she had a Tesla, obviously. But the cops weren't going for it. The back and forth became increasingly tense, with Glickman threatening to report the officers while refusing their suggestions to just call for a ride. Eventually, they arrested her on a charge of disorderly conduct by intoxication. Although the charge was later dropped after Glickman completed community service and paid court fees, the incident drew significant attention when body cam footage went viral. Glickman defended her actions, attributing her behavior to a medical condition and denying intoxication. Despite this, the university reassigned her from her director position to a faculty role. She's since described the experience as deeply humiliating, citing the harsh reactions from online commentators. For someone with nearly 3 decades of service in the university, it's too bad that one dumb viral moment cost her position and prestige. It's a good reminder of how quickly a single incident, especially one caught on camera, can wipe out years of dedication and hard work. Number 4. Squad car misuse. Matthew Ellery, a former officer from Middlesex, New Jersey, wound up at the center of a concerning incident that ended his career when he was found unresponsive in his patrol car during a midnight shift. And why was he unconscious? He had, let's just call it, had a bit too much illegal substance misuse in his squad car while on duty. Ellery, 29, was discovered unresponsive in his patrol vehicle after taking a ride on the Big H, if you get our drift, while on duty during the midnight shift. A fellow officer, acting quickly, administered Narcan, a medication that quickly reverses the effects of an overdose. It was later revealed that Ellery had overdosed on illegal substances, which naturally led to an investigation by the Somerset County Prosecutor's Office. As a part of a plea deal, Ellery admitted to possession of contraband and driving under the influence. His agreement included mandatory participation in a specialized court program focusing on rehabilitation, along with probation and a temporary suspension of his driver's license. The alternative? A potential 5-year prison sentence if he fails to complete the program. So it was a pretty easy choice. However, the incident exposed larger problems within the Franklin Township Police Department. Abrupt retirements of the department's chief and a captain followed soon after, probably in an effort to avoid further scrutiny, since the local prosecutor's office stepped in to conduct a thorough review. Mismanagement issues, including the misuse of paid time off, were later revealed, costing the township hundreds of thousands of dollars. Ellery's bad decision brought scrutiny not only to his personal struggles, but also to the systemic flaws in the department, which ultimately may be a good thing. While Ellery works towards recovery, Franklin Township is left to address the structural problems that contributed to a broader sense of disarray within its law enforcement. It's a pretty steep fall for someone who decided the best time to use illegal substances was while on duty in his squad car, right? Thankfully, no one was hurt, since he was too incapacitated to provide backup. He could have cost someone their life. Number 3. Back to the well. Brianna Rain Cruz, a 23-year-old from Miami, got herself all wrapped up in legal trouble after being accused of orchestrating elaborate schemes to defraud Regions Bank. Authorities allege that Cruz used stolen identities and fake companies to secure tens of thousands of dollars in loans. It wasn't her first attempt either. She had already been arrested earlier in 2023 for trying a similar scam on the same bank. So, how did she think she could pull it off again? Brianna Rain Cruz's schemes first began when she successfully defrauded Regions Bank out of $75,000. Using stolen personal information, she created a fake business called Luxury Motor Club to make her application for a vehicle loan appear legitimate. The loan was approved, and she used a cashier's check to purchase a Mercedes-Benz, managing to pull off the fraud undetected at the time. Later that same year, she made another attempt, this time depositing a $100,000 check from a couple into the Luxury Motor Club. However, the check was later flagged as unpaid, and the true account holders denied any involvement. Despite this setback, Cruz continued their fraudulent activities. Her downfall came when she tried the same tactics against the Regions Bank branch. This time, she used stolen personal information to apply for a vehicle loan and reported a cashier's check made out to another fake business she had created. Bank employees immediately noticed irregularities in her documentation and flagged the transaction as suspicious. The combination of a dubious business name and stolen personal details led them to alert authorities, resulting in Cruz's arrest at the scene. Investigators pieced together her history of fraud, uncovering the early schemes involving the $75,000 loan and the failed $100,000 deposit. Cruz's apparent luxury lifestyle, including her high-end car and connections to upstate businesses, painted a picture of wealth built on lies. As of the release of this video, Cruz is facing multiple charges, including grand theft and fraudulent use of ID information, leaving her looking at probably getting a room in the big house. Honestly, running the same scam at the same bank, not once, not twice, but 3 times, wasn't just bafflingly stupid. It showed a complete lack of any sort of strategy. Even going to different banks or varying her approach might have delayed her getting caught, but sticking to the same method in the same place made getting caught almost inevitable. Number 2. Police taunting. Patrice Smith, a 41-year-old woman from Spartanburg County, South Carolina, was arrested after making a bold decision to taunt law enforcement on social media. Her idiotic posts not only caught attention, but also led to a tip that revealed where she was. Smith had an active bench warrant for failing to appear in court for a driving-related offense. Instead of laying low, she took to her social media account to announce she was out and about, and to tell the police that's looking for her that she's definitely out there. Her words, and wouldn't you know it, this brazen behavior turned out to be her undoing. A Crime Stoppers tip provided crucial information, including her new address, a description of her car, and screenshots of her social media posts. Deputies found her car at the specified address and attempted to make contact. When she refused to open the door, they got a search warrant and found her inside. She was taken into custody without further incident. It was such a dumb idea to openly challenge law enforcement like that, right? Especially calling them out online, where people will rat someone out just because they can. If the cops really wanted to find her, everyone knows they would have done it pretty quickly. It's not as if she were playing this wily cat and mouse game or something. There's literally no upside to calling down law enforcement on yourself. If they weren't finding her, it's probably because they weren't really looking. Number 1. Unworthy Tan Lines. Aline Tamara Moreira de Amorim, 37, and Beatriz Tavares da Silva Faria, 27, both influencers from Brazil, lost their lives in a tragic boating incident off the Sao Paulo coast. The two were attending a yacht party, but their return trip turned tragic when they put more importance on things such as taking selfies and getting tans above boring things such as not drowning. Amorim and Faria chose not to wear life jackets, so called because they protect your life, while on a smaller boat taking them back to shore. Witnesses, including the boat's captain, explained that they had turned down the safety gear because they were more worried about their photo ops and tans, which is as frustrating as it is sad. The overcrowded vessel, carrying 7 passengers despite its 5-person capacity, capsized after being struck by a wave in an area known as Devil's Throat. Which, as a side note, if there's a place that has the devil's anything attached to it, it's not a place we're going to ever visit. Places with devil in the name usually earn that reputation for a reason, and it's rarely because they're known for their safety or charm. If I were on a boat going through a place called the Devil's Throat, we're probably going to double up on life jackets and not turn them down. Anyway, Amorim and Faria, who didn't know each other before the party, were among those thrown into the water. The captain had tried to help everyone on board, but couldn't save the 2 women. One survivor, Vanessa Audrey da Silva, recalled clinging to a rock after putting on her life jacket, saying the chaotic waters left her fighting for survival. Authorities later recovered Faria's body at sea, while Amorim's was found days later on a nearby beach. Amorim, who had a 17-year-old son, had posted photos of her time on the luxury yacht to social media just before the incident. Investigators are looking into whether negligence or recklessness contributed to the tragedy, which it sounds like it did. Why the captain would even allow someone on his boat to not wear life jackets is beyond us, especially for the flimsy reasons the women gave. The whole situation is a reminder of how some people lose their lives in car accidents simply because they didn't wear a seatbelt for no good reason. We're not saying they deserved the outcome, but when someone rejects the simplest and most effective safety measures purely for vanity, then they're taking an unnecessary and dangerous risk for very little reward. Would you ever threaten a cop like this former Love Island contestant? Or what about running a honey trap to rob some poor unsuspecting person, but then completely mess it up like this couple? We're also sure you wouldn't start selling illegal substances while still being a pro athlete like this guy. And there's no way you'd be as bad as this lady faking her own demise, right? Let's get to the dumbest decisions people will make. Starting with number 6, Love Island threats. Hannah Smith, known from season 6 of Love Island USA, found herself in serious trouble following a night out in Atlanta. The 26-year-old North Carolina resident ended up facing felony charges after an incident that escalated quickly outside a concert venue. The whole thing went down when Smith was escorted out of the event for some kind of disruptive behavior. An officer on the scene tried to help her get into an Uber, but things took a turn when she allegedly swung at the officer. Even after being handcuffed, Smith apparently wasn't finished with whatever freakout she was having and reportedly tried to kick the officer multiple times. Once inside the police vehicle, the situation only got worse as Smith allegedly threatened the officer's life and even extended the threats to the officer's sister. Facing charges of making threats and obstructing law enforcement, Smith was booked into the Cobb County Jail. Her bail was set at $8,000 and she was released the next day. Interestingly, after getting out, Smith resumed her social media activity without mentioning the incident, leaving followers in the dark about her legal troubles. Fans of Love Island USA might remember Smith's dramatic journey on the show, where she initially coupled up with fellow lover of islands, Kendall Washington. However, their magical island romance was short-lived, as Washington later paired with Nicole Jackie, making it to the finals before also splitting up after the season ended. Meanwhile, Smith exited the villa on day 10, struggling to find a lasting connection. It's always dumb to act up enough to get yourself arrested, and even more so when you're a person that has any sort of fame at all. Even though she didn't do well on the show, even a little fame is fame. And countless other reality stars have spun their 15 minutes into something more lucrative. Not to mention, being even mildly famous means every little stupid thing you do is going to get talked about for the 10 people who remember you and are interested. Number 5, Shoe Trap. Ashley Arrieta and Jamari Webb were hit with charges for an incident involving a man from Oregon at a Tacoma hotel. The two were accused of luring 27-year-old Hector Gonzalez Jimenez with the promise of a paid encounter, only for events to take a dark turn after his arrival. Hector met Ashley at an exotic dancing club, where they arranged to meet later at a nearby hotel. Surveillance footage showed him arriving at around 3:20 a.m. and Ashley following shortly after. According to court records, Jimenez sent a $1,500 payment to Ashley before heading to his room, where he thought the two were going to sin. Once the payment was confirmed, Ashley signaled Webb to proceed. The sequence of events inside the room remain uncertain, but one thing that's certain was that Hector didn't exit. The next morning, hotel staff found him unresponsive, with evidence pointing to an encounter involving a firearm. A holster and ammunition magazine were located nearby, and clues soon led detectives to track down the suspects. Investigators pieced together the timeline using hotel footage and several items left behind. A single slip-on shoe found near the doorway caught their attention. The other matching shoe was discovered in Webb's apartment during a search. The footage also showed the pair leaving the hotel shortly after 3:30 a.m., which is some pretty strong evidence on its own, since he was there for 10 minutes and they were the last to see Hector alive. Arrieta eventually admitted to meeting Jimenez that night and shared that Webb arrived after she gave him a signal. She claimed to have left the room before any conflict occurred and denied any knowledge of further actions. Authorities believe the two suspects attempted to cover their tracks by discarding the victim's phone along a nearby highway. Webb, who had a prior conviction for robbery, faced additional charges due to firearm possession restrictions. Both Arrieta and Webb were held on $1 million bail, awaiting further court appearances. Jimenez's family traveled from Oregon to attend the hearings, but chose not to speak publicly. It's dumb that these two tried to cover their tracks by tossing Hector's phone like they were being so clever, but were seen entering and exiting, and the dude somehow literally lost his shoe. Like, how do you not realize that you lost your shoe, of all things? And then they left the firearm in the holster next to Hector along with the mag. Like, they couldn't even try to claim that the wound was self-inflicted. They just tried to leave evidence everywhere. If this crime was from some detective video game, it would be the training level where they basically tell you what to do to catch these idiots. Number 4. Some guy tries to impersonate a cop and gets arrested. Anthony Michael Harper, a 22-year-old from Phoenix, Arizona, got into some legal trouble after posing as a police officer. Authorities charged him with impersonating a peace officer and unlawful imprisonment following an incident where he allegedly detained some guy at a convenience store. It all began when Harper, dressed in a tactical vest, approached some guy at a Circle K in Youngstown, a small town in Maricopa County, Arizona. Claiming to be Officer Harper with the state of Arizona, he ordered the guy to put his hands behind his back, placed him in handcuffs, and escorted him to his vehicle. So the guy, who really thought Harper was a real officer, complied with the supposed arrest, which is what you're supposed to do with law enforcement. Harper's strange arrest didn't go unnoticed. Security guards from a nearby company recorded the encounter and reported it to the actual Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. Deputies reviewed the footage, which showed Harper had been following one of their security patrol cars and then confronting the man and making his arrest. When questioned, Harper claimed that he believed he was within his rights as a bail recovery agent to detain the man. According to court documents, it was noted that a reasonable person would have likely believed Harper was a police officer based on how he introduced himself, which is obviously illegal. However, investigators found that Harper lacked the necessary documentation and wasn't certified by the Arizona Peace Officer Standards and Training Board, meaning he had no legal authority to carry out the arrest. Harper's attempts at justification didn't hold up, and he was arrested on charges of unlawful imprisonment and impersonating a peace officer. Following his guilty plea, he received a sentence of 65 days in jail, which he had already served by the time his case concluded. It makes you wonder what exactly Harper's plan was once he arrested that guy, right? Was he going to take the guy to some cardboard jail he made at his house? Down to the police station? Seriously, what was he going to do? Number 3, short-term thinking. Matthew Amesquita, a former police officer in training from Ruidoso, New Mexico, found himself on the other side of the law after falsely reporting a break-in at his apartment. It all started one morning when Amesquita, who was still in training, was sent home to shave due to department policy. But instead of just shaving, he ended up destroying his career. Amesquita claimed he stopped at a nearby store to buy a razor, but his card was declined. Surveillance footage later contradicted this, showing him leaving with a bag of purchased items, so he lied about that for whatever reason. Then he shaved at home, but when he left, he realized he had forgotten his body camera inside along with his keys. So instead of just calling a locksmith and explaining what happened, Amesquita instead kicked in the door, later calling the police to report a break-in. Officers arriving on the scene quickly noticed inconsistencies, and a closer inspection revealed that boot marks on the door matched Amesquita's own footwear. With no signs of a forced entry by anyone else and nothing missing from the apartment, things you'd expect from a break-in, it became pretty apparent what had happened. During questioning, a detective pointed out these details, pressing Amesquita to just be honest, which is clearly something he struggles with. Eventually, Mesquita admitted that he had locked himself out and resorted to kicking in the door to regain access. His false report led to an immediate arrest, and he was booked for making a false statement to the authorities. Following the incident, Mesquita was terminated from his position, and the department reported the situation to the state's Law Enforcement Certification Board. His future in law enforcement is likely over, with the probable consequences for his certification. Mesquita's dumb attempt to cover up a simple mistake basically ended his career as a police officer, which is obviously a blessing in disguise, since who knows what kind of cop he would have been. This guy clearly had no problem lying about anything and everything for no real reason, and his judgment was more in line with what you'd expect from a teenager, not someone who can legally carry a firearm. Number 2. Extracurricular importation. J. Emmanuel Thomas, a 33-year-old former Arsenal striker, was denied bail after facing charges for attempting to bring illegal substances into the UK. Authorities at Stansted Airport discovered approximately $795,300 worth of the devil's lettuce stashed in several suitcases arriving from Bangkok. This discovery led to Emmanuel Thomas's arrest, along with 2 women who were also taken into custody. The National Crime Agency reported that around 60 kilograms of the substance were found in the luggage, leading to suspicions that Emmanuel Thomas might have been involved in orchestrating the smuggling effort. The soccer player was questioned by authorities and has since maintained his innocence, eager to clear his name in court. It's a surprising turn for Emmanuel Thomas, who spent much of his life on the soccer field. A product of Arsenal's youth academy, he made his Premier League debut at 19 and showed great promise under the legendary manager Arsene Wenger. Despite his talent, consistent first-team opportunities were scarce, pushing him to seek playing time elsewhere, including clubs in places such as Ipswich, Bristol City, and even teams in Thailand and India. Throughout his career, Emmanuel Thomas enjoyed a lavish lifestyle, often sharing glimpses of his travels on social media, from luxury resorts in Thailand to other exotic locations. But now, his off-field issues have overshadowed his once promising soccer journey. The dumb thing is, Emmanuel Thomas was still actively playing, having signed with Greencock Morton in Scotland's second tier. As of the release of this video, he's appeared in court for a plea and trial preparation hearing where he continued to deny involvement in the alleged smuggling scheme. The court deemed the case too severe to be handled by a magistrate's court, moving it to a higher court for further proceedings. Bail was denied, and Emmanuel Thomas remains in custody while awaiting trial. His contract with Greencock Morton was terminated shortly after the charges were filed. The whole ordeal ultimately begs the question, why risk it all with potential illegal activity when he could still easily earn a living on the soccer pitch? It's absurd, especially considering the long list of clubs willing to give him a shot, despite the ups and downs in his career. Instead, he wants to smuggle? And not only that, but he wants to smuggle that much? He tried to sneak through 60 kilos, which is about 132 pounds for those of us in the US. How did he even think he'd get through customs with it? All it would take is one security dog walking by and the game is over. What a stupid decision. Number 1. Still above ground. Karen Sulkild, a 42-year-old fitness trainer from Perth, Australia, faced serious consequences after faking her own passing to cash in on a life insurance payout of over $700,000. The elaborate scheme involved Sulkild claiming she had passed away in a car crash, filing a clearly altered certificate, and even using a falsified letter from the coroner's office, which was also obviously altered. She managed to collect the payout by posing as her former partner, but things quickly began to fall apart. The story is pretty crazy, but the craziest thing was how she got caught. Despite being under investigation due to all her weird blunders, Sulkild didn't exactly lay low. She kept running her fitness business and coaching a local soccer club, living life as if nothing had happened. Her carefree behavior attracted attention, and as her case gained media coverage, reporters began to follow the story closely. A 9 News reporter eventually spotted her casually shopping at a local center and took the opportunity to confront her on camera. When asked about the accusations, Salkeld angrily denied any wrongdoing, but the growing evidence was impossible to ignore. The trouble deepened when the bank flagged several suspicious transactions linked to the insurance payout, leading them to freeze her account. Desperate to access the funds, Salkeld went to the police with altered ID documents, trying to pass them off as legitimate. However, the poorly modified documents didn't fool the authorities, and her scheme began to unravel rapidly. It wasn't just the insurance scam. Investigators also soon uncovered even more fraud. Salkeld had embezzled nearly $156,000 by siphoning money from gym-related accounts into her personal accounts. According to 9 News Australia, she admitted to being inspired by a movie plot, which is as stupid as it sounds. But her actions didn't lead to a Hollywood-style happy ending. Her lawyer tried to argue that her behavior was just a momentary lapse, but the judge wasn't buying it, considering the amount of poorly considered effort she was putting into the whole scheme. It was revealed in court that Salkeld had previously received a $500,000 insurance payment in 2018 after her partner passed away, yet still ended up in significant debt. The court reviewed her actions as motivated by greed rather than any real need. As of the release of this video, Salkeld is facing sentencing with a potential maximum prison term of 7 years after pleading guilty. The court is still determining how much she must repay, as the full extent of her financial restitution to the insurance company hasn't been finalized. It seems kind of obvious that if you're going to fake your own passing, you can't be running around clearly being alive, running your business, and transferring funds out of your own account. Like, how is that not going to get you noticed? One of the many morals to this story is, don't learn how to commit fraud from a movie. And if you're going to claim you passed away, you should probably try to act like it too. Who are some of the most unlikely people to find fame and fortune on OF? Let's find out. Starting with number 5, fake injuries. Chloe Welsh, who's from the UK, found a unique way to make a living with her OF. After breaking her feet in an accident years ago, Chloe faced financial difficulties and was forced to sell her house. However, during the lockdown in 2020, she discovered a lucrative opportunity on OF. Chloe began creating content that involved her pretending to have broken legs and wearing leg casts, about $6,500 a month. Chloe's journey into this niche market began with an unusual request from a follower on her OF. Having experienced real leg casts before, she thought, why not? And decided to give it a try. She now spends hours crafting her own casts from plaster of Paris and caters to various requests from her loyal fans. Chloe even got some crutches to enhance the authenticity of her content. Despite the challenges of making and removing the casts, Chloe found that the financial rewards were worth the effort. The demand for Chloe's content has grown, with followers asking for more and more elaborate scenarios. She's received requests to wear a neck and leg cast simultaneously, and even considered a full body cast for a significant fee. Chloe also mentioned a fan's request for her to have all her limbs in casts while wearing a fake pregnancy belly and sitting in a wheelchair. Before venturing onto OF, Chloe spent 13 years in the modeling industry. However, her current earnings far surpass her previous income. In addition to the cast-related content, Chloe has found a particularly profitable niche by wearing stockings, tights, and pantyhose. This segment alone brings in an impressive $52,000 a month. Chloe feels like this niche market allows her to continue making substantial money indefinitely. Chloe is also open-minded about the requests she receives. She's been asked to perform various unusual acts, including being chained to a chair and tickled. Chloe feels that the older she gets, the easier it becomes to make money in this industry, especially with the MILF niche gaining popularity. She's confident that she wouldn't be able to earn this kind of money in a traditional job, and plans to continue her unique brand of adult content for as long as it remains profitable. We guess you could say that this is definitely a different kind of casting call. We'll leave now. Number 4, the former cop. Zachary Samuel Maidment, a former cop, wound up in quite a situation. At a party in a penthouse suite at the Gold Coast Star Casino, he was accused of being involved with some nose beers. This party wasn't just any celebration, it was his birthday, and he was there with his ex-fiancée, Tiana Hansen, a Playboy cover model. Things took a wild turn at the bash when Maidment was allegedly caught on video cutting up some nose beers. According to the footage, Hansen was seen indulging in nose beers off another woman's body, and Maidment didn't just watch, he joined in, asking others to partake as well. So Maidment wound up facing serious charges, including possession and supplying nose beers. After the incident, Maidment's life took an unexpected turn. He and Hansen, despite their past, decided to team up again, not for another party, but to create content for OF. They branded themselves as the couple of exes you've been waiting for and started producing explicit material for the subscription-based platform. Hansen, who had already been successful on OF with a six-figure income, was thrilled about this new venture. She shared their excitement on her Instagram, where she has a sizable following. They even filmed some content in the same penthouse suite where the infamous party took place. In just 24 hours, their collaboration brought in tens of thousands of dollars. Hansen expressed how freeing this experience was for both of them, especially for Maidment, who had been under strict control while he was a police officer. Now they had the chance to be themselves and share that freedom with their audience. How lovely. Maidment ultimately pleaded guilty to his charges for his actions and was hit with a 12-month suspended sentence. Maidment's lawyer also said that he had stopped using nose beers and he was remorseful for his actions. Do you believe that line? Number 3. The former nutritionist. Nutritionist Dr. Giovanna Isabel Ortega was living a double life. She worked for the Mexican medical company Iztacali by day, but by night she was known as Dr. Essential on OF. Her secret was exposed when her racy online content started circulating among her colleagues. As a result, Iztacali fired her, claiming her second job was inappropriate. Dr. Ortega, who holds a master's degree in clinical nutrition, didn't take this lightly. She decided to sue her former employer for unfair dismissal and loss of wages. Interestingly, her employment contract had no clause forbidding her from having an OF account, giving her a pretty strong case, and local media speculated that she had a good chance of winning that lawsuit. And despite the controversy, Dr. Ortega turned her misfortune into an opportunity where she now fully embraces her OF persona. Iztacali has yet to comment on the situation. However, the case raises an interesting question. Should having an OF account lead to job termination? According to Sophie Campbell Adams, a solicitor from Britain and Time, it's not so straightforward. She says that having an OF account doesn't automatically warrant dismissal and that employers need to conduct a thorough investigation and consider the employee's contract and any workplace policies. Campbell Adams adds that the nature of the content and its potential impact on the employer's reputation could influence the decision, which, like it or not, makes sense. If the contract allows other forms of employment, there might not be grounds for termination unless specific restrictions apply. The outcome of Dr. Ortega's lawsuit remains to be publicly available as of the release of this video, but it certainly added to the discussion about the boundaries between personal and professional lives. As more people take on side hustles, these questions will likely become more common. Was Dr. Ortega smart to start her OF, even at the cost of a career she worked so hard for? Or should she have just stuck with what she had, since she was hardly struggling? Number 2. The former faker. Rachel Dolezal, now known as Nkechi Diallo, found herself juggling quite an unconventional career combination. From being an after-school instructor at Sunrise Drive Elementary School in Arizona to selling explicit content on OF, Dolezal's life has taken many unexpected turns. Dolezal's side hustles have been a necessity since she struggled to find stable employment due to her controversial past. For over a decade, she posed as a black woman, even serving as a chapter president of the NAACP and teaching Africana studies at Eastern Washington University. Her deception was exposed in 2015 when a news reporter revealed her true ancestry. Both her parents were white. The scandal led to her being fired from the NAACP and dismissed from her teaching position. Dolezal defended herself by claiming she was transracial and had done nothing wrong in not correcting assumptions about her race. She tried to rebuild her image with a Netflix documentary in 2018 and by writing a memoir titled In Full Color, which is weird and deserves its own story. However, trouble followed her. In 2018, she was charged with theft by welfare fraud, perjury, and false verification for public assistance. Court documents revealed she had illegally received $8,700 in food assistance and $100 in childcare assistance. She settled the case in 2021, agreeing to pay restitution and complete community service. Despite the fallout, Dolezal continued to seek the spotlight. In 2020, she appeared in a documentary about Black beauty, where she claimed to be a victim of shaming and ridicule and blamed her ex-husband for repressing her. She continued to assert her identity and face criticism from various communities. Images from her high school years show Dolezal with blonde hair, starkly contrasting the image she later adopted, which must have been a wild thing to discover. It's tough to cheer for this lady, and honestly, we're not really sure how we feel about her. She wasn't born black, and we're pretty sure that transracial isn't an actual thing, so pretending to be black isn't an okay thing to do. That said, it doesn't seem like she was outright exploiting black culture, and we do know spent a lot of time fighting for social justice. But we're also not a part of that community, and therefore, we have no business having an opinion one way or the other. If you're enjoying this video, be sure to stay tuned right here to find out how this dumb couple ratted themselves out. Number 1. The former teacher. Brianna Coppage, a former high school teacher from Missouri, got caught in a media storm after her OF account was discovered by her school. She resigned from her teaching position and quickly found a new job, only to be fired days later due to her adult content on the platform. Brianna Coppage was an English teacher who had been working at St. Clair High School. Her journey took a sharp turn when her OF account was discovered by school administrators. Yeah, and how was she discovered, you sinners? Brianna initially started her OF account as a side hustle, aiming to pay off her student loans. She was earning around $42,000 a year as a teacher, which wasn't enough to cover her debts and living expenses. Her OF account quickly became a substantial source of income. Within a few months, she claimed to have made nearly $1 million. This is a huge jump in earnings from the amount teachers make, particularly in Missouri, which is one of the lowest paying states for educators. Maybe it's just us, but we're still trying to figure out who are the type of guys that would pay for her content. Despite trying to keep her face hidden and using a pseudonym, Brianna's content was eventually linked to her real identity. The discovery was made when someone posted a link to her OnlyFans page in a local Facebook group. The news spread like wildfire, and Brianna was placed on administrative leave before she ultimately decided to resign. Brianna's resignation didn't mark the end of her struggles. She soon found a new job as a community support specialist at Compass Health. However, within just 5 days, her new employer discovered her OF account and claimed she violated their social media policy. Brianna was put on leave and subsequently fired. She expressed her frustration, saying that her employers only did a digital background check after hiring her, which kind of seems like it's on them. Brianna took to social media to cope with her situation, posting humorous videos asking for job recommendations while acknowledging her predicament. She explained that her OF account was a necessity due to her low teaching salary and mounting debt. With her new income, she was able to pay off all her student loans, car loans, and credit card debt. While we generally have no problem with how others make their money as long as it doesn't hurt anyone, we can understand the issues that can come along with having an OF account if you work in professions such as education. There's already enough controversy around teachers these days. There's no reason to add to it, so policies like that make sense. But she claims she's already making millions anyway, which leaves us with the question, if she's really making that amount, then why keep trying to teach? It's already pretty clear that the two jobs conflict, so she's got to pick one. If it's not about the money and it's about the teaching, then go find some place and teach, and do what you can to scrub the internet of your presence. But if she likes the money and the platform, then move on. But pick one, because you can't have both. The lesson here is that we always have the freedom to choose, but we don't have the freedom to escape the consequences of the actions we choose, fair or unfair. She went from having millions from winning the lottery to going broke and receiving government assistance. This cop was caught driving recklessly under the influence, but expected to be treated differently than the average citizen. And this reality TV star apparently didn't think twice when she was given money to transport 2 large locked suitcases. What are just some of the worst and dumbest decisions some people will make? Let's find out, starting with number 6, lottery curse. Callie Rogers, once Britain's youngest lottery winner, made headlines at just 16 when she won £1.8 million jackpot back in 2003. Going from working at a grocery store to this massive sudden wealth seemed like a dream come true. 18 years later, Callie's life tells a much different story, revealing a roller coaster of lavish spending, personal struggles, and eventual bankruptcy. After her win in 2003, Callie quickly upgraded her lifestyle. She moved into a nice new place, spent a whopping £300,000 on designer clothes, and treated herself to some plastic surgeries. Parties, high-end purchases, and generous gifts to friends and family consumed much of her winnings. Reports suggested she gave away £500,000. But Callie later said that she felt like some people only stayed in her life to take advantage of her, which is very believable. Despite the glamour, Callie's life unraveled. She faced challenges managing her money, relationships, and the sudden public attention. By her early 20s, her wealth was gone, and she found herself stuck in a deep depression. At one point, she even lost custody of her children and spent thousands on cosmetic surgery in a bid to regain confidence. But her troubles didn't stop there. In 2021, Callie wound up with some legal issues after crashing her vehicle while under the influence. This incident led to a driving ban and mandatory curfew. She was also claiming government benefits at the time, which is a pretty far fall from her millionaire past. As of the release of this video, Callie rents a modest home in Cumbria and drives a Peugeot, which is like a Ford Escape, and a far cry from the luxury cars she once owned. However, her story isn't entirely bleak. Now 37, Callie has embraced a simpler life with her new partner and 5 children, including a son with special needs. She describes this chapter as her happiest yet, finding comfort in family and moving beyond the pressures of her lottery win. Reflecting on her experience, Callie has called for more protections for young lottery winners and pointed to the difficulties of handling such a large sum of money at such a young age. While Callie says she's learned from her past, she has been pretty open about the challenges of winning such a large sum at a young age. She said her age and inexperience made her an easy target, and said that she often felt surrounded by people who only wanted her money. She's also shared that the sudden shift from a carefree teenager to someone managing immense responsibility was overwhelming, leaving her feeling lost and unable to trust others. One of her biggest regrets is not having the foresight to save her winnings to better support her son Blake, who has cerebral palsy. She's expressed deep remorse, saying that her one big regret is that the money isn't here for Blake. Her thoughts make us ask a larger question. Could her story have been different with better guidance? Or were the pressures of sudden wealth too much for anyone her age to handle? What do you think? Has she truly grown wiser? Or did the cost of those lessons outweigh the benefits? Number 5. Public shaming. Shayna Hardin from Cleveland, Ohio, was in the news in 2012 for a reckless decision that led to a unique form of public punishment. After being caught repeatedly driving on a sidewalk to bypass a stopped school bus unloading children, Hardin got publicly shamed. To address her actions, a Cleveland judge handed down a creative sentence. Hardin had to stand at an intersection during morning rush hour for 2 days, holding a sign that read, "Only an idiot would drive on the sidewalk to avoid a school bus." Bundled against the cold, she stood silently as passing cars honked and onlookers snapped photos. The moment was broadcast live, drawing significant media attention. Her punishment also didn't stop at public shaming. Hardin's license was suspended for 30 days, and she was fined $250. The bus driver who had caught her behavior on video had explained that this wasn't just a one-time incident. She had been using the sidewalk as a shortcut regularly. Despite initially denying the accusations, the evidence spoke for itself. What stood out most was Hardin's childish lack of remorse. On the first day of her punishment, she smoked, texted, and wore headphones, seemingly indifferent to the lessons the judge intended to impart. While she complied with the rules on the second day, the spectacle sparked debates about creative sentencing and accountability. What's your opinion on this one? On one hand, public shaming is a method with deep historical roots, often seen as an effective way to hold people accountable and deter similar behavior. In medieval Europe, as an example, criminals were placed in stocks or pillories in public squares where they were subjected to ridicule and humiliation from the locals. Similarly, colonial America employed punishments such as branding or wearing signs that proclaimed one's offense. It forced offenders to confront their actions publicly, creating a memorable lesson not just for them, but for everyone who sees them. But on the other hand, public shaming can have long-lasting consequences, especially today when moments like these can go viral and live forever online, and may not be as effective for those seeking any sort of notoriety or fame they can get. While it might make sense in cases like this on a local level, where safety was at risk, we have to ask, does this type of punishment still make sense? Or does it risk going too far? Should we start public shaming more? Tell us in the comments below. Number 4. Reality TV star caught smuggling. Olga Bednarska, a 27-year-old reality TV personality who appeared on Netflix Too Hot to Handle, narrowly avoided jail time after being caught attempting to smuggle nearly 150,000 pounds worth of illegal substances into the UK. The story, involving luxury vacations, designer goods, and questionable decisions, paints a picture of someone clearly out of her depth. Customs officials stopped Olga at Manchester Airport after her return from Thailand, discovering 2 suitcases packed with nearly 40 kilograms of illegal substances concealed beneath clothes. When questioned, she initially claimed she had packed the bags herself, but later said they were given to her by a friend known only as Tex, which is like, don't trust a guy who only goes by a name like Tex, right? Everyone knows that. If someone named Tex just hands you suitcases, you don't take them where he's asking you to, because it's a guarantee that there's probably something illegal in them. Anyway, Olga also insisted she didn't even have the codes to open the suitcases, and she barely knew Tex anyway. The court learned that Olga, originally from Poland and living in Manchester, had been struggling with financial troubles, including 16,000 pounds in debt. To ease her situation, she agreed to a totally not shady, all expenses paid trip to Thailand, where she was tasked with bringing back designer clothes and watches, supposedly in exchange for 18,000 pounds. Along the way, she became entangled in smuggling, apparently unaware of what she was truly transporting, or so she claimed. Olga's lavish getaway included a free hotel stay and spending money provided by Tex and his associates. She was expected to maintain appearances by purchasing high-end items to cover up the operation. Her involvement in the scheme, however, ended the moment she handed over the goods, according to her testimony. During sentencing, the judge discussed her obviously poor judgment, noting that she had placed her trust in near strangers motivated by financial desperation. While acknowledging the harm caused by such crimes, the judge opted for a suspended 20-month sentence, sparing Olga from serving time behind bars. She was also ordered to complete 15 days of rehabilitation activities. Though Olga walked out of court free, we can't help but wonder if she was truly naive or willfully ignoring the risks. If someone you barely know offers to send you on an all-expenses-paid luxury vacation abroad, and even promises to pay you on top of it, probably don't do it. There's rarely a legitimate reason for someone to generously fund a stranger's vacation. Number 3. The Fake Out. Janae Johnson, a 36-year-old from Georgia, was arrested after a dramatic highway chase after being accused of robbing an elderly woman of her cell phone outside a shopping center. The pursuit and takedown were captured on police body cameras, showing a chaotic sequence of events that spanned busy streets and a major interstate. Johnson was tracked by police to a car wash where she had been spotted following the robbery. Officers moved in to confront her, blocking her dark Mazda SUV as they attempted to bring the situation under control. Initially, Johnson appeared to cooperate, raising her hands from inside the vehicle as officers surrounded her. However, as the squad cars closed in, she suddenly shifted gears. Backing up at a high speed, she spun the SUV around and fled, narrowly avoiding the officers attempting to stop her. The chase escalated onto the interstate, with Johnson weaving through traffic in her dark Mazda SUV. Police used a precision immobilization technique, better known as the pit maneuver, to force her vehicle to spin out of control. The SUV came to a halt against the median, but Johnson wasn't ready to surrender. Johnson sprang out of the vehicle and attempted to flee on foot, but officers swiftly apprehended her. She was charged with several offenses, including armed robbery, fleeing police, and theft by receiving stolen property. We're not totally sure what the plan was here, or why she thought she'd ever get away. Stealing a phone, especially in today's world, is one of the easiest crimes to trace. Cell phones can be tracked through apps, cellular providers, and even by police technology designed to locate devices with pinpoint accuracy. It's as if she just stole a homing beacon. Then she stops at a car wash right after the theft, as if that was going to be a good place to hide. We don't know if she was trying to buy time, lay low, or make her car less noticeable. But choosing a public place instead of immediately leaving the area only made her more visible and easier to find. So she goes on her high-end speed chase thinking she was going to outrun a bunch of cops. And all of this over a cell phone? What a dope. Number 2, the overly aggressive police force. Mike Hikola from Kuna, Idaho, spent 35 years as a law-abiding citizen in a tight-knit community close to his family. But one visit to the local police station turned into a nightmare he couldn't have imagined. Mike had gone to dispose of outdated prescriptions properly. Before heading inside, he noticed some parked police vehicles, and his curiosity got the better of him. Years had passed since he had seen a squad car up close, so he took a closer look at the equipment inside. Footage shows him holding a bag of prescriptions and peering into the cars like an intrigued kid. What happened next took an unexpected turn. A man in an unmarked car sped into the lot and began yelling at him for whatever reason. Mike, who had no idea this was a plainclothes police officer, felt threatened, so brushed the man off and went into the station. Moments later, he was surrounded by officers, accused of obstructing their duties. Despite complying at first, Mike resisted when asked to remove his hands from his pockets, believing he hadn't done anything wrong. The encounter escalated, leaving Mike physically restrained, humiliated, and understandably, deeply shaken. After his arrest, Mike was denied a phone call for hours and was forced to remain in soiled clothes until his wife arrived, which is awful. Although the charges were eventually dropped, the impact on Mike's life was significant. He sued Ada County, leading to a $250,000 settlement and mandatory training for deputies in constitutional law. While Mike still appreciates police for their duty to serve and protect, he says this experience changed his perspective, and we're sure many other people feel the same way. We genuinely respect the police department. Every day, they face the impossible challenge of dealing with people at their worst while risking their own lives. However, in this situation, these officers were clearly in the wrong and escalated a situation that didn't need to be escalated. Number 1, she's crazy sober. Andrea Smith, a police sergeant with nearly a decade on the force from Miami Gardens, Florida, wound up with some serious allegations after being charged with reckless driving and suspension of driving under the influence. She was arrested by her own department. But what followed wasn't just unusual because of who she was, but because of what she said and did. It began when officers pulled over a speeding white Mercedes that reportedly ran 2 red lights. To their surprise, the driver was their colleague, Sergeant Andrea Smith. According to the arrest report, Smith had some pretty bloodshot eyes, slurred speech, and the smell of alcohol on her breath. Body cam footage captured her stepping out in a dress and heels, denying any wrongdoing, but also refusing a breathalyzer test and field sobriety tests. Not that those matter anyway. So, despite her protests, she was taken into custody. In the police car, Smith accused her department of treating her unfairly, even claiming retaliation for whistleblowing. She also offered unsolicited financial advice to the arresting officer and boasted about her $130,000 car. At one point, she appeared to fall asleep in the back seat and repeatedly insisted that she wasn't crazy. She was sober. Like we all do when we're not crazy and completely sober, right? Smith's defense attorney argued the case lacks merit, claiming the body cam footage somehow supports her innocence. He emphasized that Smith initially agreed to perform sobriety exercises, but alleged that officers stopped conducting them without explanation. He further suggested her arrest was an act of retaliation, though specifics of her whistleblower claims remain unclear. While the court proceedings are ongoing as of the release of this video, Smith has pleaded not guilty and maintained she was sober during the incident. Her career, however, has taken a hit. She has been relieved of her duties at the Miami Gardens Police Department. It seems like this is going to be a rough road for Smith, because despite her insistence of being sober and totally not crazy, her actions in the back of the squad car were anything but. If she wasn't impaired, why refuse a breath test? As a veteran officer, she must have known how that would look. And maybe she's facing retaliation. Police departments aren't exactly known for avoiding internal politics. But if that really was a valid fear, you'd think she'd avoid putting herself in those type of situations at all costs. But then again, maybe we're just sober and not crazy like that. What are some crimes that are almost too ridiculous to be true? Such as a scammer guaranteeing former Major League Baseball player Todd Hollandsworth a return of at least $12.5 million in less than a year on an investment of just $325,000. And Hollandsworth actually believing him. Or this psychic who was able to get over $4 million on just bad omens. Let's get right to it. Number 7. Over 3,000% ROI. Beloved former Dodger Todd Hollandsworth and his wife fell for what must have been one of the most obvious scams of the century. Apparently, Hollandsworth and his wife were sucked into believing they would get a 30 times return on an investment opportunity, which is basically a 30,000% return every month, and they expected it for 10 months. So, when Todd and his wife invested $325,000 with a personal friend, they expected to start getting $12.5 million in returns in 10 months. In their defense, they did actually have an investment contract that promised this in black and white. What Todd and his wife didn't know is that a contract can't legalize fraud. Todd and his wife say that there was some reason for suspicions right off the bat. For example, they had never heard of RPAD LLC, the company that they were handing their money off to. But they signed anyway because of the personal relationship they had with Lonnie Moss, the man who introduced them to the scam. So it wasn't the over 3,000% ROI that threw up the suspicions flags. It was the fact that they had never heard of the company they were handing their money to, which is just interesting. Anyway, as you would expect, the monthly returns didn't come, and Todd finally realized that something was off. So the couple accused Lonnie Moss of trying to scam them and operating RPAD LLC just to misappropriate their funds for his personal use. Naturally, that quickly became the subject of a lawsuit, and now the Hollandsworths are seeking $1 million in damages in the civil suit, which claims fraud, civil theft, and breach of contract. Moss, on the other hand, was arrested for first-degree grand theft and money laundering. Maybe if the Hollandsworths get their million in damages, this won't end up being a total loss for them. But I can't imagine why they seriously thought they would become over $12 million richer over a $325,000 investment. Number 6. The Jealous Pastor. Roger Allen Holmberg, a 75-year-old pastor, was crazy enough to put hands on his wife in public just because she got an upgrade to first class and he didn't, which is about as childish as you can get, right? The couple were aboard an Alaska Airlines Flight 275 from Seattle to Anchorage when Roger suddenly realized something was wrong. His wife was in the first class cabin and he was stuck at the back of the plane with all the other common folk. Roger clearly thought this was some cosmic injustice here, so he stormed into the first class cabin and asked his wife how she got upgraded. She explained to him that she got the upgrade because she was a Gold Point member and she had enough points to get the upgrade. The woman in question, who's 59 years old, had only been married to Roger for 18 months and only became his wife after his wife had passed away. Well, Roger apparently didn't think his wife should be in first class without him and didn't like her attitude when she explained everything. So he yelled at her and flipped her off. There was an off-duty policeman on the plane who witnessed the whole thing and asked Roger to take things easy. But that didn't didn't calm Roger as he got physical with his wife in front of the entire plane. The off-duty cop then threatened to put Roger in handcuffs if he didn't stop smacking his wife. Roger probably thought that would be the end of it, but he was wrong and was arrested as soon as the plane landed. When he was questioned about his behavior on the plane, Roger said that it wasn't such a big deal. After all, he had only lightly tapped his wife on the head to call her attention to something. But Roger's wife had a different and much more interesting story to tell. Apparently, this wasn't Roger's first time getting physical, and the year before, he had broken her finger during a confrontation. However, Roger wasn't going to let that go without telling some tales of his own. He said that his wife was disrespectful, had anger issues, and had once squeezed his genitals. If Roger is convicted, he may spend up to a year behind bars. You wouldn't expect this sort of behavior from an old pastor at any time, let alone this type of behavior in front of a bunch of people. Maybe it was some old-timey thinking. We're glad we don't live in a time where men treating women like this is acceptable. Number 5. The cop with a past. A fugitive from the greater Cincinnati area of Ohio was found working as a police officer in his hometown of Mexico after being on the run for 20 years. Antonio Riano, also known as El Diablo or the Devil, fled the U.S. after he ended a man's life at a bar back in 2004. Antonio Riano was working as a helper at the Roundhouse Bar when Benjamin Becerra, who had been previously involved in a brawl there, returned despite being banned from the place. So of course, he was quickly recognized by the bartender, and Becerra was told to leave, which he refused to do. So Riano then came to the bartender's aid and began arguing with Becerra. The argument started to get heated, so the bartender told both of them to take it outside, and they did. Minutes later, people heard the unmistakable sound of firearms going off and came outside to find Becerra deceased and Riano nowhere to be found. Over the next few days, police officers would find the weapon Riano used, complete with the rounds, still inside. But they could never find El Diablo himself. He vanished like a puff of smoke. Antonio Riano was eventually found working as a police officer in his hometown in Mexico nearly 20 years after fleeing the United States. His location was determined through extensive efforts by Paul Newton, the prosecutor's chief investigator, who spent countless hours scouring the internet for any clue, photo, or piece of evidence that might lead to Riano. Newton's persistence paid off when he eventually located Riano, leading to his arrest and extradition back to the United States. It's a bit weird that they found this guy working as a cop in Mexico, right? Maybe he was trying to right his wrong or something, which he was obviously never going to do. The takeaway here is that you can never really escape your past, no matter how hard you try. Number 4. Stolen money. Lyft driver James Elmore was tricked into delivering stolen money for scammers after he completed a very strange drop-off. Elmore got a request to pick up a package at a house in Miami-Dade, and when he got there, he met an elderly couple who invited him inside their home to speak with a man on the phone. The man then gave specific instructions on where he should take the package to, who to give it to, and what the person would say. Elmore thought the situation was pretty weird, but he didn't put too much thought into it beyond that. He just took the package and did as he had been told. When he got to the drop-off point, he met a man there and asked what the name on the package was. The man provided the correct name, so James released the package and left. What he didn't know was that he had just released nearly $20,000 in stolen money to a ring run by a guy named Agustin Garcia Marsan. Apparently, Garcia Marsan had called the elderly couple who sent the money and told them that their grandson was in some legal trouble and that they needed to raise around $18,500 for his bail bondsman that very day. The elderly couple, driven by care for their grandson, quickly arranged the money and handed it over to Elmore, the Lyft driver that Garcia Marsan had already booked. Later that day, when the elderly couple called their grandson, they realized that they had been scammed and he was in no trouble at all. Thankfully, investigators quickly tracked the payment back to Augustine, and he has since been arrested. As we like to do on this channel, please remember to take a moment to reach out to your elderly loved ones. Scams like this are becoming more common, and the elderly are a popular target. So please, warn them about these types of scams so they're not added to the growing list of victims. Number 3. The tiny defense. Conchabar Morel had no idea what he bargained for when he walked into a store and attempted to rob the store owner. What he ended up losing was what little dignity he may have had. Morel walked into the store and placed his weapon on the counter, demanding everything the owner had. The owner of the store happened to have his 8-year-old daughter behind the counter, so he was careful and cooperated with Morel. No reason to risk anyone's life, right? But then Morel pressed his luck by trying to go behind the counter, and that's when things went completely sideways. Once Morel Morel was completely behind the counter, the store owner charged at him, pushing Morel to the ground. As they wrestled, the owner's daughter picked up a baseball bat and started to hit the thief. The owner didn't even notice his daughter's heroics at the time, as he was in his own struggle disarming the robber. It was only when he watched the security footage again that he realized what his daughter had done, and he could do nothing but cry at her love for him. Morel has since been arrested and will soon face the music in court. It's probably not going to do much for his reputation in prison that he was taken down by an 8-year-old girl. Number 2. Media bias. John Cowell Lee got himself sentenced to life in prison without parole for going after Nia Wilson as she stepped off a train in Oakland, California. Cowell didn't just go for Wilson either. He went after her and her sisters as they stepped off from the train. Wilson was stabbed twice, which led to her passing, but her sisters survived with serious injuries. Crazy thing is that Cowell never even gave a motive. In fact, he wasn't even present for most of the court proceedings because of his outbursts. The prosecution pursued a life in prison without parole, the harshest punishment you can get in California, short of the ultimate punishment, something he eventually got. A weird thing about this case was the attitude of the press towards the victim. When local station KTVU Fox 2 reported the news, they showed a picture that had Nia holding what looked like a weapon and posing with it, which is obviously pretty tasteless. This picture outraged viewers because it criminalized the victim of this horrific crime and showed the media to just be desperate for clicks and attention. The weapon that Nia had supposedly posed with wasn't even an actual weapon. It was just a cell phone case. Why the media would choose to use that as a photo isn't clear to us, other than to just make the case a little more sensational. KTVU eventually apologized on Facebook, which is whatever, we guess. They got their clicks. Remember when the media just reported news without any bias? Yeah, we don't either. If you're enjoying this video, be sure to stay tuned right here to find out just how much these guys wanted to leave their country. Number 1. Bad omens. Gina Rita Russell and her family extorted over $4 million from a victim who believed that Russell truly had psychic powers. When Russell met her unnamed victim back in 2009, she told her that bad things would happen to her and her family, but she could avoid any bad things if she just gave a bunch of valuables to Russell. Funny how that works. But for some reason, this lie caught on, and the victim, who was in college at the time, so she began sending Russell money. But Russell apparently wasn't satisfied with just getting some money. So Russell then told the victim to beat herself to drive demons out, and then told her to lie to her father to get more money. So the victim did just that and lied to her father about endless therapy sessions, university classes, and sleep studies. All of the money for these ventures went straight into Russell's pockets. Russell even had one of her own family members impersonate a therapist in a call to the victim's father to really cement the lies. When Dad's funding eventually ran dry, Russell had another plan. She told the victim to start advertising sensual messaging services for men who needed it. We're being delicate about this here, but what you're thinking was exactly what she was doing, and the income from that was also going to Russell. Things got even stranger when the victim met a chief financial officer in DC through her messaging service. Russell caught on to this and made the victim begin an affair with the man who was married. Russell then told the victim to get money from the man under the guise that she was being threatened by mobsters who would harm her since she owed them a lot of money. Before long, even the man got involved in the scam, as Russell's relatives then called him up pretending to be mobsters and threatening to ruin his life if he didn't pay up. We say pretending here, but it doesn't sound like they were too far off from the actual mafia. Thankfully, this scam couldn't go on forever. The CFO had already embezzled over $4 million to pay Russell and her goons, and his company soon came looking for that money. They involved law enforcement officials, and Russell soon found herself in police custody. Once she was arrested, police discovered that Russell was also running the same psychic scam with another victim at the same time. The good news is that Russell is now off the streets and was sentenced to more than 10 years in prison. It's weird that psychics are allowed to run businesses in the US, isn't it? They're blatantly scamming people, but it's somehow still allowed. At what point is a psychic not a scammer? What are a few of the most questionable decisions people will make? For example, did this firefighter make the right or wrong decision getting her neck tattoo? Or what about this guy who decided to pretend to be a cop? Or how about this guy who was caught by police after he bragged online about his cash? Let's find out, starting with number 7, the neck tattoo. Ex-firefighter Kiana Adams lost her job with the Mobile Fire Department over a tattoo on the back of her head. So, what was the big deal about the tattoo? Let's find out. Adams worked at the fire department for 9 months before her employer fired her for the new ink. Despite the department's policy against facial or neck tattoos, Adams got a head tattoo anyway. She assumed that since the department had already hired people with prominent neck tattoos after she got the job, then getting one on her head shouldn't be an issue. Also, she knew she could cover it up, so no biggie, right? However, one of her coworkers thought it was a biggie and submitted a complaint about the tattoo, so the department ended up investigating her. She had to sit through an interrogation over the matter, and the fire department concluded that her ink violated their tattoo policy. The city, being reasonable at the time, offered to let it go if she just grew her hair out to hide the tattoo, which she did. But somehow, everyone forgot that growing out hair takes time, and a few weeks later, someone else submitted a complaint. Adams explained that as an African-American woman, she had different textured hair and had no idea how long it would take to grow in enough to cover the tattoo. Then, 3 months after she got the tattoo, the department updated its policy to prohibit head tattoos completely. A captain at her station took a picture of the back of Adams's head, which showed the tattoo was no longer visible. However, she still lost her job that day, and 2 captains who defended her were disciplined, with one of them getting fired, both of whom are appealing the decision. Adams has since filed a federal discrimination lawsuit against the city of Mobile, alleging that her termination wasn't solely about the tattoo, but was a pretext for discrimination based on her race, gender, religion, and orientation. The lawsuit claims that she faced a hostile work environment and was subjected to harassment, including racist remarks from colleagues. And Adams is seeking redress for what she claims was unjust treatment during her tenure at the Mobile Fire Rescue Department. So what do you think? Who is making the worst decisions here? The person who is still on probation in a new job that decided to get a tattoo that violates policy because other people did it? Or the people who are making a huge deal about her violating policy even though she was doing everything the department asked her to do to rectify the situation? Number 6. Play cop. Antoine Tuckson spent 15 years pretending to be a police officer, but his scheme finally fell apart when he called the actual police department for backup. Tuckson pretended to be a U.S. Marshal and had the props to prove it. He had a bite dog, a police vest, a taser, and even a firearm. However, he couldn't keep up the ruse forever. In March of 2022, he tried to arrest a couple women at a restaurant who were attempting to dispute their bill. Of course, the situation escalated since that's not something you typically get arrested for, so Tuckson made the questionable decision to call Prince George's County Police Department. Tuckson met the officers at the restaurant and flashed them his badge before explaining what went down. But while they were outside talking, something else caught the officers' attention. Amidst all the chaos, Tuckson left his dog inside the restaurant, something law enforcement canine handlers never do. Law enforcement demanded to see Tuckson's credentials again, so in order to combat this, he called his friend, who goes by the name Ninja Rich, to pretend to be his supervisor. So, Ninja Rich, who wasn't even a real ninja, arrived on the scene in police-style clothing while officers were arresting Tuckson. He wore a fake uniform and carried a firearm, a radio, handcuffs, and expandable baton. Ninja Rich explained that the dog was an emotional support animal as well as a patrol dog to try and explain away the situation. But that's not something that would ever happen since police dogs go through very different training than support dogs. So even with Ninja Rich's brilliant disguise and excuses, he couldn't stop officers from taking Tuckson into custody. Law enforcement placed the dog in the care of Prince George's County Animal Services Division. The next day, Ninja Rich turned up at the Animal Services Center claiming to be a U.S. Marshal, and the center gave him the dog back. This wasn't Tuckson's first stint behind bars. The police imposter was accused of the same offense 3 times before. Back in 2018, he involved himself in a robbery by claiming to be a U.S. Marshal to the victim and responding officers. He was also arrested multiple times between 2005 and 2009 for receiving stolen property. Over the years, he was also convicted for carrying a firearm without a license and for first-degree theft. Upon his arrest, federal officers discovered he had equipped his car with police-style blue and red flashing lights and also carried a fake ID card. Tuckson was ultimately sentenced in July of 2023 to 37 months in federal prison. Seriously, did Texan really think he was going to fool actual cops? Like, it seems incredibly obvious that an actual police officer would never just leave a trained police dog anywhere. And then even trying to get your buddy to help you and double down on the authenticity was really stupid. Number 5, the convenient excuse. Businessman Lester Hui refused to pay back hundreds of thousands of dollars to a London casino as he claimed he was too drunk to gamble. According to Hui, he had to drink a shot of firewater Mau Tai liquor after losing a drinking game. The alcohol was 65% proof, and by the early hours of the morning, he had at least 4 shots of it, although some reports claim it was closer to 10. In Hui's version of events, Chris De Lima, the casino's vice president of international marketing, provided the dice and ordered a bottle of Mau Tai to the table before playing the drinking game. However, De Lima dismissed Hui's claims and argued that Hui was sober enough to make his own decisions, saying that Hui even drove himself home at the end of the night. But Hui refused to back down, claiming that he was so intoxicated they shouldn't have allowed him to gamble. The casino, Aspinall's Club, whose clients included royalty and celebrities and was only open to exclusive members, of course denied the allegations and demanded Hui pay back his $775,000 in losses. Hui allegedly drank 3.5 bottles of wine or champagne that evening, as well as the shots. He signed 5 pledges for gambling credits throughout this time at the casino. Ultimately, Hui lost $775,000 and handed the casino a blank check for the payout, but it bounced a week later, prompting Aspinall's Club to sue him. Both sides refused to back down in court, with Hui doubling down on his accusations of the casino letting him get too drunk to make informed decisions and the casino denying his claims. So the question here is, was this a dumb strategy or a smart strategy? On one hand, being clearly intoxicated makes it easy for Hui to claim he wasn't able to make any rational decisions and therefore shouldn't have been allowed to gamble. On the other hand, the casino is likely well prepared for people claiming that they were way too drunk to gamble to get out of paying debts, and there would be plenty of video evidence to show exactly how intoxicated he was. Ultimately, the court ruled against Hui, finding that his claim of being too intoxicated to be responsible for his gambling decisions was unconvincing, which is pretty much what we would have guessed. Number 4, the conniving clerk. A security camera captured a gas station clerk, Meet Patel, stealing a $1 million lottery ticket from an unsuspecting customer. The unnamed customer, who was apparently very lucky, bought 2 scratch-off tickets that day, one worth $40 and the other worth $1 million. After scratching off the barcode, the customer asked Patel to check and see if the tickets were winners. Store video showed Patel lying that the $1 million had nothing on it. He then took the ticket and placed it in the trash until the customer left the store. Then he took it and put it in his pocket, real smooth-like. The store footage then showed him celebrating winning the $1 million. However, for earnings higher than $200,000, winners had to collect their winnings at the Tennessee Lottery's Nashville headquarters. So when Patel tried to claim the prize, employees were suspicious and refused to give him the ticket. Upon further investigation, they discovered that he had stolen it from the rightful winner. So the organization tracked down the unknowing customer to tell him he had won $1 million. Patel was arrested for theft and held on a $100,000 bond. Number 3, credible threats. Detroit resident Ariel Moore sent threats to multiple beauty school classmates where she threatened to blast her school. Apparently, she was expelled earlier that day for bad behavior, whatever that means, and didn't take it well. So she thought she'd show everyone what real bad behavior was and sent out some pretty serious threats. Moore sent texts to classmates, including one of an actual firearm she said she was going to use, and made multiple calls to the David Presley School of Cosmetology to make even more threats. So of course, that scared the hell out of everyone, and staff canceled classes for the next few days. Fortunately, Moore didn't actually act on anything. The thing was, Moore already had an arrest warrant for felony identity theft when she was arrested for her new threats. She faced 20 years in prison and fines of up to $20,000. Despite her past legal problems, and she seems to have had many, with a couple of cases moving through the courts, Moore's social media post suggests that she's turned a new leaf. We don't know what ended up happening with the school threats case, but she seems to have moved to Indonesia, where she seems to be committed to being a better person. Hopefully, she figures out some of her issues, and maybe getting expelled and leaving Detroit might have been the best thing for her. Number 2, the biased, unbiased judge. Central New York Supreme Court Justice Aaron P. Gall made some racially insensitive comments to police and civilians after an incident at a 2022 party, and it cost her her job. You'd expect to hear this stupid stuff coming from drunk actors or something, but not from a New York Supreme Court justice, right? Gall was a guest at a high school graduation party where groups of uninvited teens suddenly turned up. Fights broke out, and her husband and son were involved in them. The police were called to break it up, and Gall spoke to the police officers when they arrived on the scene. During the 80-minute interaction, the judge said a group of 4 black teens didn't look smart and that they were definitely not going to business school. Unfortunately for Gall, the cop's body cam caught her entire rant. The New York State Commission on Judicial Conduct ruled that she demonstrated racial bias. Gall disagreed and argued that, despite her comments, she should stay at her post because she didn't actually have a racial bias. But she also repeatedly invoked her position as a judge when she was talking to the police and said she would always side with them, which shows more bias, right? She was apparently trying to get the police to arrest whomever she felt needed to be arrested and tried to use her position to influence their decisions. However, the commission made her watch back the body cam footage, and she desperately hung on to any details that would get her out of trouble. She said she never referred specifically to the black males and testified that she wasn't racist and didn't see color. She also acknowledged that she shouldn't have brought up her status as a judge, but added that everyone there already knew who she was anyway, which also doesn't make sense because if everyone knew who she was, then why would she need to keep talking about it? Really, why bring it up at all? Despite her unsuccessful attempts to walk back her comments, the commission suspended her without pay. It seems like Justice Gall should have just kept her mouth shut and let the police do their job, doesn't it? It's common knowledge that pretty much all cops have body cameras these days for the protection of everyone, so for her to start blabbing about her opinions, racial or not, was quite dumb. And as a judge, you'd think that she'd never want to show any kind of bias anyway. If you're enjoying this video, be sure to stay tuned right here to find out how she blew $10 million of her investors' money in Vegas. Number 1, flexing gone wrong. Cops arrested 3 London gangsters after they snapped photos with wads of cash from selling illegal substances around the UK. Why criminals insist on posting this stuff online, we'll never understand. Carl Newell, who thought his messages were encrypted, bragged about his deals on wheels while posing for pictures with rolls of cash and illicit substances. He used the EncroChat platform, which was sort of a WhatsApp-type messenger that was used like crazy by criminals, to give out personal details and share ads for his nose beers. Newell and his cronies, Jack Bayless and Indrik Kekoni, bragged on Facebook about the quality and amount of their product, which made it easy for police officers to track them down. Bayless and Kekoni were arrested in August 2020. Newell was a bit harder to catch. He fled to Spain when his buddies were arrested. 4 months later, he was arrested and extradited back to the UK. EncroChat has since been dismantled as it was infiltrated by law enforcement back in 2020, leading to thousands of arrests. Click to watch one of these next videos. Let us know in the comment section what you'd rather have. Pick 1 year to pay 0 taxes or free healthcare for the rest of your life.